Hi, I'm talking today to life coach Alice Stapleton. Hi Alice, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Alice, let's talk a little bit today about positive thinking. But let's start with what is the aim of coaching?
Well, the aim overall is to give people a direction and a focus to their thinking. A lot of clients that come to me, they're very kind of confused and they're not really sure what path it is that they want to take. So the overall aim is to very much give them a bit more clarity and help them put together a sort of action plan to move them forward. What I would say is that the aim varies very much depending on what the client's needs are. What actually does tend to happen is they might come to me and say, you know, I really want to change my career, not really sure to what. And you sort of start out on that as being the aim. And then actually what happens is that you find that there might be another area of their life that needs work as well. So although you might start with one particular aim, it sometimes changes as you go on. So it's good to know that it's flexible in that way.
When you're working with somebody, what role does positive thinking play in the coaching process?
I think it has a really important role. You know, if you're working with somebody to try and move them forward and they're in a very negative space, it can be quite tricky to sort of motivate them and to look at what the opportunities are and, you know, get them to realise their potential. So the role of positive thinking is very important in my view, because you want them to be able to sort of think positively about themselves and their future in order to motivate them to move towards that.
And if you're taking somebody who is just naturally more negative or pessimistic, how would you approach that type of person?
Well, there's always been a debate about kind of nature versus nurture as to where our mindset come from. But if I was working with somebody who was quite negative, what I would perhaps encourage them to do is for, you know, maybe every negative thought that they have, think of maybe 5 positive statements that would counteract that argument. So that's kind of one way that you might look at something to start that process off. The one thing I would say is that it's my belief that our thinking patterns have, you know, developed throughout our lives. They're very habitual and it can't happen overnight. You know, there's a lot of people out there who say, you know, just do all your affirmations and think positively. And I do sort of say to clients, actually, it might take a while because we're trying to, you know, allow you to learn a new habit, that new habit being a sort of more optimistic, positive approach. So it takes time, but it is possible.
So give me one practical example of, let's say, an exercise or a technique that you would do with a client working around positive thinking or gratuitous thoughts.
Well, I mean, I mentioned one there. Another one that I sometimes suggest is the sort of angel and devil exercise. And so you sort of picture yourself with an angel on one side of your mind who is, you know, your positive voice and who's very encouraging and supportive and all that kind of thing. And then the sort of little devil on your shoulder is the one who sort of tells you, oh, you can't do that. Like, what are you even thinking? Like, don't be so silly, you know, stop being a dreamer, all those kinds of things. And so a technique that I use is actually sometimes, even in sessions, I might have a client sit on one chair, which is their kind of angel chair, and then they have to keep sort of moving to and from the chairs. And for every negative thought that they have to move into the angel space to think of an argument against that negative thought. And it's about building up evidence which contradicts your negative thinking. So say you're thinking, oh, I'm just really rubbish at my job. That's your devil talking. So the angel would be saying, okay, what's happened recently that disproves that theory? You know, what skills do you have? All that kind of thing. And then the devil is no doubt to say, well, that's not true, blah, blah, blah. And you have to keep going until the angel wins the argument. So yeah, if you're doing it with seats, there's a lot of movement. But yeah, it's a good exercise to make sure that you continuously argue against yourself and end up focusing on the positive rather than the negative.
What do you think are the benefits of working with a coach as opposed to reading a good book on positive thinking or motivation?
I think working with a coach is what it allows is that kind of objective perspective. I think when you're just reading a book, it can be quite easy just to fall back into your negative habits, and you don't necessarily have that support that a coach might provide you with. And like I was saying, if it's a very ingrained habit, you know, reading a book is not going to suddenly change that. Whilst working with a coach over a period of time, they're more likely to sort of shine a light on corners that maybe you can't see yourself, you know, encouraging you to see things from different perspectives and what the opportunities actually are, that if you're so ingrained in a negative frame of mind that maybe a book isn't quite going to shift it as much as it could be.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
That's all right.